here's Alex from Black Sheep IT Consulting, and it is April 2026. So I have here a Siebel environment that I've just updated to 26.4, and the repository version is still 26.3. And so I'm about to run the repository update, and but I want to know the impact of that update, so I can use the new monthly update, or also better known as the database upgrade guide calls it, the repository update pre-assessment utility. So let's check it out. If you go to your Sieb server bin directory in 26.4 or higher, of course, then you will find one monthly update jar file. So that's a Java file, and so you need to run it with Java. It's fully documented in the database upgrade guide. Let me just run it with the local JRE of my Siebel installation, Java -jar monthly update.jar. Let's see what happens. It asks for required arguments, 4 of them, and the first one, -i, is a pointer to a ini file. So I've prepared an ini file, and if you look at it, you will see immediately it looks very, very familiar, as it is basically a copy of the post-install database setup ini file. So if you run post-install database setup once, you have this file, and all you need to do is add one parameter, that is the name of a integration workspace that will act as the parent for the dry run import. So there will be a temporary import into this integration workspace, and that will be used to verify all the differences and gaps and conflicts. But that will be the developer workspace created inside this one will be deleted afterwards, so there will be no trace left in your database inside that integration workspace. So that is an integration workspace that you create from a parent version that you want, let's say your current project, or even an older version if you're really curious like I am. There's also a second references check argument that is identified by bookshelf, and you can set it to all, which is actually not recommended, or critical. So to only check for critical references that you must really pay attention to. All is like information overflow, probably. It's also, you can leave it out and it defaults to critical. So either way is fine. So I just change my ini file right here. And so I must, of course, make sure I have this integration workspace. So here back in my Siebel Web Tools, I have created this integration workspace. And I'm a curious person, so I created this from main 11. So main 11 is a very old version here in my repository. And if I go down to main 11, if I can, then it is based on 23.7. So we're like going back almost 3 years. And to make matters worse, more or less, I have fumbled with a few standard objects that are modified between those almost 3 years. That is the action business component, the generic web menu, and a workflow process, the standard workflow process in memory promotion upgrade process. So I activated that, hence that's why it shows up as insert here. I activated that and I modified it a lot. So that simulates a situation where a customer would also modify, well, necessarily a standard business component or menus or workflows. And imagine, of course, you have a much longer list of standard objects you have modified. So this is basically what my current workspace looks like, 23.7 plus some standard objects that have been modified. So now I can ready to run this. So again, we can run the jar file with -I pointing to that ini file, and then -p and z refer to passwords for the Siebel user and the table owner. And then -t refers to a name that you give that will be the name of your log folder and your report file. So let's call it mu demo today's date. Okay, so yeah, let's run this, and you can see it loads up, it identifies the delta, that is 23.7 to 26.4. So that is, of course, the version where your integration workspace comes from. Target version is 26.4. It identifies the delta. It creates a workspace. You see, def sadmin. Yeah, of course, it runs as sadmin. Creates that workspace and runs a batch import already into that workspace. If you basically show this here. Let's find that. Yeah, we can actually find that developer workspace right here, but it will be deleted afterwards when the whole run is finished. So it will be used temporarily to, well, what's actually happening? Probably we see a lot of stuff going on right here. So the database is very busy, and our friend, I just saw it here, Siebel CLI is busy as well, which is doing a batch import here using the famous TDF import, the true delta file import from, of course, 23.7 onwards. And it also has some additional parameters like import report. So it's running in the report mode, in the dry run mode. It's still importing though, so your database is going to be busy. But it also then analyzes the differences and conflicts and puts that into a report, HTML report, and also it writes to tables in the database, which then populate views in Siebel Web Tools. So this will run for quite some time, depending on your gaps that you have, on the delta that you're spanning. And so we'll just pause the video here and come back when it's done. All right, so yes, this has finished after quite some time. So let's check here. It did a lot of things, obviously. So there'll be a log file as well. So we saw it identified, processed records, thousands of records here, generate reference data for applets, skipping few because no critical objects were found. So this log file is already quite revealing. And here's the totals. And there is, of course, importantly, the reference to the assessment report in the Sieb server log file, log directory. There's notice the name, that's the name that we put HTML file. So that's, of course, the first thing we want to see. But before we go there, let's check on that developer workspace, and it's gone. So it has been removed entirely after all the checks were done. The integration workspace remains, of course. It might be one of your project workspaces, so that can't be deleted. But the temporary workspace is definitely gone. And in the log file, there's in the log directory, there's the, detailed log file. And now finally, let's open that HTML. So Yeah, it's a pretty well formatted HTML report. Let's zoom in a little bit. So it starts with that update info. So you have all the version info, the impacted objects. So depending on your version gap, of course, there will be different numbers and depending on your customizations. So we have 14 critical objects. They're definitely with a total of 24 critical attributes. And the report at the time of recording in this version of Siebel, it deals with the UI layer, applet views, the business layer, business component, workflows, not the physical layer. So that's not included here, but there will be, honestly, there shouldn't be any conflicts in the physical layer if you follow the rules. And it also deals with test scripts, that's Siebel test automation, and UPT, usage pattern tracking, wherever it finds correlations. So it hasn't found any here. And there's a full summary. You can do a little bit of sorting here. Nice. So we have most of the objects are applets, business components. And then we have the critical summary, which lists the, well, didn't it say 14? Well, now it's less critical objects. So again, given the object count, web template, there are definitely 5 critical things that happen to web templates and 2 critical things in the applet level, and then there's 1 for the others. Then you have a categorized section where you find by the layers UI objects, so you can filter your object type. For example, it said web templates is critical, and you can also filter for all critical, that's the 5 web templates, and informational, that's the other one, where in the informational category, Oracle tells you in a column, recommendation column, okay to take. So you might want to look into it, but it's typically, yeah, this one is an internal attribute, I guess, and so it's not really relevant. But the critical information is definitely what you want to look into. Let me zoom out here for the big view. So that is, of course, web template. So there's the definition attribute. The code of the web template has changed. So there's the Siebel old value as of 23.7 in my case. And the customer value, the customer in this case did not make any modifications, but since there is a Siebel new value, the whole web template definition has changed, and that is classified as critical, so the recommendation is needs attention. And that, of course, you have the names of the web templates, and you should put those on a list and check if maybe use a diff comparison and see what has happened exactly. So sometimes it's subtle changes, sometimes it's Oracle adding, for example, ARIA information, accessibility information. It needs attention. You should definitely check that out. There is no customer value, so nothing has been overwritten in that case. So yeah, that's a very nice HTML report, of course, for your perusal. Let's check out the business layer, starting with critical. So that's the full list of critical changes, basically boils down. Let me zoom in again. The action PC, remember I messed with that one on purpose, and I messed with actually the business component, user property, private fields. I messed with that because I know it has changed by Oracle. So I have a custom value, a customer value. The Siebel old value has been changed. You saw the customer added a field, and then the Siebel new value is entirely different. So that definitely needs attention. User properties are very, very critical, and that's marked as critical here. Then we have some business server script being changed. Yes, there is eScript in vanilla sometimes, but no customer changes. So that's, let's say that's critical, but a light critical. Also have what else do we have? There is another workflow. That workflow I messed with mostly has the, oh, to be honest, I just dragged things around, so the layout is affected a lot. And here's one that I couldn't make out any difference here on the sheer optics of it, but definitely it has, maybe it's a false positive. So again, it's your task to go through these lists and at least deal with all the critical or informational. And you might ask yourself, okay, do I have a little bit of help here? Can I export that to Excel? Well, you could copy those tables probably and put them into Excel, but I'll show you something else. And then we have the testing data, just for the sake of completeness, where you have one test script that is in the sample database where the contact screen is referenced, and that is, well, that is put out here as a sample. And then we have the repository usage, and that is a usage report where you see for each object selected on top, like this applet, where it's actually used. So the basically gives you all the views where this applet is used. Of course, these are all vanilla objects. And let's see, no usage information found there. Okay, so that's the full HTML report. And of course, you can generate this again with more details, the parameter we discussed. And what else can you do? You can go to Siebel Web Tools, and in the Web Tools 26.4 and higher, in the Tools menu, you have an Update Assessment screen. So that's practically the same information. See, I ran the tool various times, so let me find, that's today's run. And you have the same number, so that's basically your summary. And then you have your impacted objects, by category, the layer, the object type, object name, the classification. That's where you can query, for example, critical. And let's run this. Very rudimentary applets, but these applets should have an export feature. So here's your Excel export. And of course, it's no big deal finding out the tables where this is stored, and then using select statements on these tables. And of course, in the age of agentic AI, you can also hook it up to your agent and make this data accessible through the REST API. You get the idea. And here it is. Here is the same data, the object usage that we have seen. That is the action business component. So it's of course used everywhere. There's the web template. And that is not the only view you have. You have a assessment detail view, so you can go for all the layers or just user interface or just business. Let's visit them all really quick. So that's, again, you have the update assessment header, and then you have all the layers here. And you can go by layer. For example, just the user interface. Or let's see if all those views are working. Business layer. Yeah, and you see all the three values, the Siebel new value. So force active has been set to yes in the new Siebel version 4. Parent activity ID in this business component. And the old custom value was no. The old value was no, so there's no change by the customer, but definitely a change in the new version. And what other views do we have? Then we have those test script views. Again, there's just the one sample test script that is found here that is basically referencing one of the objects found in the other parts of the report. In case you're using test automation, this of course is very useful. And the impacted objects, that's basically the view for each object. You can see which test script it is used for. Again, these are all standard vanilla views, applets on Siebel database tables. So you get the idea where you can really grab that data and make it useful for you. All in all, the pre-assessment data is very rich. So do check it out. Do take the opportunity of Oracle Air. Oracle has added that feature. And your next repository update, you probably want to run this pre-assessment report before the repository update. It's optional, of course. You can just run the repository update, but that, of course, seems like a good idea. So thank you very much. Take care and bye-bye.